Good morning. This is Carl Schilling. Thanks so much for being with me today. I wanted to discuss the power of advocacy. So, we're going to talk about how to differentiate yourself in an overcrowded market. But before we get started, I would like to just briefly tell you a little bit about who I am, as not everybody knows that. Um, I've been in the sales industries for over 35 years, been a successful salesperson, was $1 million roundtable producer in the life insurance business, was also a President's Council producer in the resort real estate business. And then lastly, I spent almost a decade in sales training and development, which is really near and dear to my heart because I'm an educator and a coach at heart. That's really what I love to do. I'm a published author. I have written several books and been fortunate enough to get some of my points of view out there. And lastly, I have been a media and public relations consultant to over 100 microcap public companies. So today, I wanted to help share some stories with you and maybe find some ways for you to uniquely differentiate yourself in a marketplace that's pretty much overcrowded. So we're going to learn today how to differentiate yourself from the crowd, how to develop a visionary business, which is quite different from business as we know it today. And obviously, some of these things I'm sure you're familiar with, but maybe we get another spin on it. And that's a unique value proposition. And I also want to share with you how you can increase revenues, per client by substantial amounts if you consider yourself a financial concierge. That's a nice way to present yourself and put yourself on a different kind of platform. So we're going to discuss that today. The beginning is we have a lot of white noise. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of that. But I like to use a little bit of a story and an example to show you what white noise really locks into be. Imagine you were at Yankee Stadium and there was 45,000 people in the audience, the crowd, and they're buzzing and yelling, and you're at home plate and you want a hot dog. So, but what you've got in the stands is you've got 45,000 hot dog salespeople in the stands. So they're all yelling about why their hot dog's better, why it would benefit you more, what it's made of, and all these wonderful things and features and benefits, right, as we usually commonly refer to them. But how long would it be before you really just couldn't tolerate it anymore? I don't know, 30 seconds maybe with them all yelling, screaming at you, maybe a minute if you're a very patient person. But after that point of time, the white noise causes confusion. It's chaos. So when confusion enters the equation, people don't admit to it. People are not going to tell you, whoa, I'm confused. Go over that again with me. No, what people do when they're confused is they shut down. They just shut off, right? So what you want to make sure of is that you're not lost in this tsunami of white noise. And that's really the issue today. You know that the internet and social media has dramatically changed the way we receive information and what information we do receive, and a lot of misinformation. I mean, that's really the magnificence of the fact that we can get so much information. That's wonderful. But in the real discovery facet, what we find is there's a huge gap now. So misinformation is that much easily spread. Rumors, opinions, things that have no bearing whatsoever. So really, the difference here is whether you're unique or you're average. Now, most, unfortunately, have fallen in victim into average. So what you have to do in order to differentiate that, the first step, is you have to have a unique selling proposition. So really, what's yours? Right now, the idea is at Advocacy, what we've done is we have put it this way: your best interest is my only concern. Now, that's an interesting lead line when you speak with anybody and you're able to say, your best interest is my only concern. That's a much different platform to come from. And that's because we discuss financial victimization as the springboard for everything else. And just so you know, approximately $400 billion in annual losses. And they say that only about 17% of the victims actually report. So you do the math on that. Now, as to the unique value proposition, a little different than the unique selling proposition. It's the kind of value you offer. So, everybody talks about value added, but I say, value added for the most part is usually lost leadership or something of that nature. A lost leader, you hear that a lot. I'm using that as a lost leader, but lost leaders just mean you're throwing away money for the most part. Marketing has proven, lost leaders are not what they're cracked up to be. But the concept of value added, if you're really putting forth quality value and you're really offering substantial value, you don't need value added. You need, value based. That's really the presence of it. So, and part of that value is you're able to create relationships and make a unique proposition. Let's take a look at the circle here. You see in the center, we got financial victimization, which is a topic that no one is familiar with today. No one's really discussing it. Oh yeah, you got American Greed on TV. You've got some other things, but for the most part, this is an undiscussed conversation. So in our approach, your best interest is our only concern. We're helping make people aware. You want to make people aware of the circumstances that surround them or what's going on in their life. They appreciate that. Okay. It's not preaching at them. It's just making them aware, which develops trust. Now, as you develop trust, those who've been given trust, must prove faithful inside that trust. So it's very important that you can prove yourself faithful. That's probably what's the worst thing that's happened to our industry, is that people have gotten away from the factor of the trust they've been giving. They've been given. Now it has to be legislated. That's, it's kind of sad. I mean, really, that shouldn't have had to come to that. Lastly, from this whole thing, you develop a relationship, which is a much stronger bond, and it will ultimately lead to a whole lot more compensation. Now, the discussion of whether you have a business or you have a practice, many can go on about that, but that doctors and lawyers, they usually have practices. I think it means that they're continuing with their education in the sense of lifelong learning. They're continuing to, as we'll discuss later, they're continuing to find more ways to create value through knowledge, and then they are offering that as a service. But the point of being an entrepreneur is that it's way different than being a business owner. It's way different than being an employee, for sure. And many business owners today are just basically employees. They don't think they are because they own the business, but yet they've become indentured to the business, and the business can't survive without them, and therefore they're an employee of that business. But see, an entrepreneur is a visionary risk taker, and as such, they create visionary businesses, and they make positive change. They've come to learn that it's not about the money. It's truly about the relationships, because money will follow that. Now, with business and employee mentality, they don't have a tolerance for risk. They're not trusting themselves. So you must ask yourself, you want to be a U Incorporated, you want to trust yourself, you truly want to be entrepreneurial. That's going to really differentiate you in the marketplace. Here are some concepts of the visionary business, just to give you an idea. I mean, it's not about commissions. I know that's going to sound very strange, but you can't chase money. I've learned this. I spent a good portion of my earlier years chasing money, and I repelled it just like everybody else has done. It's not. It is not going to. You're not going to attract money by chasing it. It's about relationships. It's about the perceived value that you have to offer. What is it that you offer that no one else can offer, and what is special about you? What makes you different? And how can you speak to the audience and give them what they want? So the key is always giving people what they want. Now, that sounds kind of silly because people say, well, we're always doing that, but truly we're not. Most of the time, we're trying to give people what we want. We're not giving people what they want. We have to erase our own internal bias, and we have to give people what they want. And that's a process, which we'll go over. Lastly, I think it's very important to be present at all times. We always talk about listening, but active listening is far different than just simple listening. Hearing is not listening. So if you're present at all times, you truly are connected to the person on the other side. Certainly you sat with someone at one point in your life where you knew they were not listening to you, or you just got the sense that they weren't with you, even though they were looking you straight in the eye. It's sort of that hollowness, and that's not going to develop a relationship. You need to be connected. So let's look at it on the graph. In the beginning, you ask a lot of questions. Obviously, questions lead to people getting a chance to like you because they want you to listen to them. People enjoy being listened to. I mean, that's why women have been superior to men in that area. Women listen, men talk. So people like you because you're a listener. That's what they usually like. That's the intro phase. From there, you're able to share with people what your unique value proposition is and attach that to what it is they want. Where your unique value proposition matches their wants, we've got trust. And we've got implicit trust, and we've got strong bonds of trust, which creates a relationship. And at that point in time, the relationship is what will drive the compensation. I wanted to go off on a little bit of a sideline here for you, just to give you some ideas on some of the statistical analysis in the sales world, which many times sales professionals are not really thinking of or exposed to. As Brian Tracy used to always say, prospect, present, and follow up. Those are really the three components of what it is that you do in any sales career, regardless of what it is you're selling. Now, at the highest level of sales are Rainmakers. They represent about 8% of the arena, and they collect about 80% of the revenue, all the sales revenue. So that 8%. Now, what is it they do different that others seem not to do? There's nothing really special about a Rainmaker, shy of one thing. They follow up. And here's the numbers on that. 85% of all sales are made on the fifth call or later. Now, that's still a statistical database point that has been around for decades, but it still holds true, so it doesn't change much. 85% of all sales are made on the fifth contact or later. That includes all contacts. And only 10% of the sales force as a whole, only 10% make 3+ calls or contacts. So 85% happens after the fifth or later contact, and only 10% make over 3 contacts. So you can see the big gap there. This is why 80% of the revenue goes to the 8%, which are Rainmakers. About 15% of the overall revenue goes to 20 to 35% of the marketplace outside of the Rainmaker. I'd call them sales professionals, solid sales professionals making a good living and doing very well for themselves. The other 50% of that sales arena, they fight for the crumbs. So if you look at the difference here, if you follow through on being a Rainmaker is a creator. And the reason for creation is that we live in a world where we all think of competition, but we're not in a zero-sum battle here. The world is abundant. There's always another sale to be made. There's always another product opportunity. But in a zero-sum world, we're competing, so sort of like I win, you lose. A Rainmaker is a creator. I realize that the more I create, the more value I offer, the more service I render, the higher my compensation is, and the more rewards and things I'll create around me through that. Now, the average salespeople, all those sales professionals, that 15%, they're followers. I mean, they're simple followers. They follow a system, they follow a pathway, they follow what's put in front of them. They follow, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're solid. They're solid followers. They're not really creators, and they're not particularly leaders, but they follow. Now, the mediocre side, the 50% that fight for the crumbs, are mired in mediocrity, and that's simply because they're conformists. They are not even following. They're following the follower, as it were, and they're not even sure why they're following the follower. They're following. So your choice is really between a Rainmaker or mediocrity. And as a Rainmaker, you've got more freedom. You're self-secure. You're self-reliant. You've added value. You're creating value. Mediocrity makes you always reliant on conformity. You're always conforming to something. It's always the reliance on outside forces. You're always thinking in terms of security instead of independence. And basically, you're relying on other people all the time. There's always excuses. These people. You've been around them. They suck the value out. They don't add the value. They don't create value. They're value takers. Ultimately, they're victims. And they let everybody else know that they're a victim, and it's everybody else's fault. So certainly, I like to think sense of a war on mediocrity. I just really, really despise mediocrity. In your perfect scenario, you're going to create that you incorporated process. So it's about the creation of value. It's about the entrepreneurial spirit of taking on all the risk. Therefore, you can reap all of the reward. you are constantly exchanging good, solid value for compensation. And through that process, you're always making a difference. And then to really multiply and create much more depth in what you do, you just simply recreate yourself from that process. All right, briefly, I wanted to just kind of cover on the DOL because I know it's a big topic. I know it's a topic of interest. I also know that it's a topic of concern and a lot of good information, a lot of bad information. So let's just kind of cover it this way. Let's take the positives. There is positives in everything. So let's take the positive. It's a new process. You're going to learn a new process. That's always good. Learning is always a wonderful thing. You're going to reduce competition, but as we discussed earlier, there truly is no competition because you'll be creating and you're differentiating, so there's no competition. And the good thing is it's to protect consumers. So the DOL tells us, and we could debate that all day long till the cows come home, but one side would say, consumers are actually going to be hurt. One side would say consumers are going to be protected, but in theory, consumer protection would be positive. Now, the negatives are increased regulation, obviously, and then additional workload, which is a sad fact of increased regulation, and then decreased revenue for a lot of reasons. I mean, one, with the additional workload, you less time to actually do the things that actually make money, sometimes more expenses going out the door. So decreased revenue is definitely a negative on that side. But through it all, there's always an opportunity. As the Chinese have always shown, the symbol for crisis is the same symbol for opportunity. So like anything else, you should be looking for the opportunity. And here that gives you the chance to become a specialist, to specialize and separate yourself from everybody else. It gives you a chance to be a better recruiter, train and develop other people because you'll become knowledgeable on the topic that is a wanted and desired topic. And lastly, you can learn the system, the overall system, why the law is in place, what's structured like, why and hows, and you can use that as an advantage because you can use that as an advantage with consumers. So at the end of the day, those I think would be the opportunities. Now, what you need to know, and you should always have a good grasp of this, without taking the word from others, it's like I tell people sometimes, you sit in church on Sunday and there's some people just listen to the pastor no matter what he says, regardless. And then there are some people actually go and open the Bible and look into it for themselves, and they get a feel for, was that proper, correct, or how does it affect me? So it's no different here. How are the rules going to be enforced? You're going to want to know. What's the small print? You certainly want to find that out. How the process is going to be asked to be done in a proper scenario. So that's going to lead you to the fact that you got to do the little things. You're going to have to dot the I's and cross the T's for sure. It's very important that you always do that. The biggest question is going to come to mind for you is, should you maintain your SEC and FINRA registrations? Only you can answer that. Only you can consider that after you review your practice. But I say personally, and again, one man's opinion, I've been wrong before, I say if one's not earning six figures through that registration process, then it doesn't pay to have that registration process, so who needs it? But that's, again, a personal individual choice. You should always be reviewing your own practice, whatever you're building, based upon the new rules and seeing where you're complying and where you're not. And most importantly, the don'ts on this is do not take anyone's opinion or their overview for fact. Because, again, as we've seen, there are plenty of arenas and areas for misinformation. I mean, it's rampant on the internet. The internet is like, I don't know if the internet's even 10% true half the time if you really did a structured study on everything that's out there on the internet. So, it's not like the Encyclopedia Britannica that had to go under scrutiny before it was released to the public. So due diligence is most important, and that's what due diligence is. Due diligence is it's full compliance, it's full disclosure, and it's total transparency. That's really what due diligence is. You can't afford in this one to take the shortcuts. You can't afford to be lazy on this one whatsoever. So you definitely need to know those things. And lastly, as far as the DOL is concerned, this is great for your entire practice. You take a SWOT analysis. So for some of those of you who are familiar with this, it'll be old information. For some who've never seen it, this is a great way for you to structure all your strategies and take a look at all the things you plan on doing in life. First, you analyze your strengths. So you identify and analyze, you focus on what can be done and why can it be done. That's really reflective on your service, how to grow it, right? How to build. And on the DOL side, again, you go through the laws, what can be done and why can it be done. Second thing you're going to take a close scrutiny of is weakness. And, what are the reasons for potential failure? A lot of people, they hate to have this discussion. I wrote a book called Fabulous Fortunes Through Failure. Failure is a wonderful thing. Failure is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Failure moves you forward. Failure gives you knowledge. Failure shows you oftentimes where the mistakes were and also how to overcome them. So really you're looking at what keeps you up at night. It shouldn't be the fear of failure. It should be the things the obstacles you have to jump over in order to get to where you want to go. So that leaves us with opportunity, which again, like crisis or opportunity, you can look at it one of two ways. So where's the gap? There's always going to be a big gap here between the strength and the weakness. And that gap is going to allow us to figure out how many opportunities can be identified. You get to list that. You should always be looking for opportunities. Again, this is a question here today is how to differentiate yourself from all others, get outside the white noise. So certainly you want to identify your opportunities and take advantage of them. Lastly is the threat. What's the direct threat to you? Well, in this case, in the DOL especially, it's legal exposure. It's liability risk. Your costs for E&O are going to go up substantially. And obviously, there may even be need for additional insurance protection, sort of like, business general liability, that kind of thing. So that's going to increase your expenses. But take a look from a SWOT perspective, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat on your entire business as it stands today. Take a look and see where it is that you're not a visionary business yet, where you are possibly a business as an employee kind of arrangement, and where you're not an entrepreneur, and do this analysis, and I think you'll come up with a lot of answers. So in my world, in advocacy, the reason we developed what we did, to set the difference, we've got two things in life. You're either process-driven or you're event-driven. And far too many in our field are event-driven. And as such, it's a one-off. It's a one-time transaction. That's what it is. It's totally disconnected in that sense. It's not a real relationship. It's a transaction. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of deal. And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that you can have event-driven practice, business, or you can have a process-driven practice or business, which is going to drive you into the world of relationships. For us, we started at advocate. An advocate is someone who speaks for another. An advocate is someone who's there for their best interest. So your best interest is my only concern. We have a process from there that we go through. That process shares the intent. It shares the solutions that we find, the wants of other people, and it develops a strong bond and relationship, which for now and in the future creates a higher revenue stream. That's why a financial concierge practice is a very, very strong bond. The other part to this is a branding, self-branding. You hear a lot about this, I'm sure. As a producer, you're contacted all the time by Nick Nanton, the Celebrity Branding Agency, all these firms. It's about thought leadership. I wrote several books. It works. Authority is great. So writing a book is wonderful. Media expertise, as I mentioned, I consult and public relation, but I'm amazed how many in our industry, how many people are lack the knowledge to understand the power of press releases and what press releases can do for your business and how rapidly it can grow your thought leadership and your branding in your community and your area. Press releases are incredibly powerful, and they're an incredibly inexpensive manner of advertising. Content marketing, that's something, again, that if you can't do it, you outsource it. And we have ways that we've done that. But blogs, vlogs, those are video blogs, podcasts, all those kinds of things, again, separate you from the white noise and separate you out from everybody else. You become that little hot dog vendor, at home plate. So as you see, for the Advocacy Network, for us, we have a digital platform. It's all educational. It creates awareness, financial victimization, and financial literacy, which leads to revenue, multiple streams of residual income, as opposed to just one. Always have multiple streams of revenue. I think you've already seen that. You see what can happen in the financial markets. So multiple streams of income are really, really important. So I think the question facing you today is, again, what do you want? You want average? You want mediocre? Certainly you wouldn't want mediocre, but you want average? You want Rainmaker? you want to set yourself apart. If that's really what you want to do, you want to understand that relationships equal clients. It's not the other way around. Relationships will equal clients. So in order to do that, you have to be a lifelong learner as well. You have to invest in yourself. Too many people in our fields refuse to invest in themselves. You are the greatest asset. The value you have to offer others and increase your service and thereby increasing your revenue, as Earl Nightingale used to always discuss. If you want more money, you want more compensation, you want to earn a higher living, then you need to just simply increase your service. And you do that through lifelong learning. So I'm giving you two powerful books today that you should definitely get. This is really not just a referral to you. I'm telling you these books will change your life. The Referral of a Lifetime by Tim Templeton and Samurai Selling. These two books will literally change your entire perspective on your career. Doesn't make a difference how long you've been doing it, how veteran you are, how increased your skills are. These books will change your entire thinking. And lastly, Lead the Field is a classic CD tape series from Earl Nightingale. 12 very important principles on how to grow your own, your own personal, not just your professional life, but your personal life, everything around you. Those 12 principles have been around for since the beginning of time, and they are always timely. So this is a great. I still listen to Lead the Field myself. You always learn something new. It hits you at different times in your life. You're in different places, so different things kind of jump out at you. But you should certainly invest and get Lead the Field and listen to it in your automobile while you're driving down the street. So in closing, for everybody, the power of advocacy is all about a simple concept that if you can create value, and you do that through self-development, you do that through identifying opportunities, you do it through being self-reliant and driven and committed, plus accurate thinking. And then if you add to that service, which is just simply seeking to make a difference on a daily basis, that value plus that service is going to equate to your compensation. So if you want more compensation, you simply need to increase the knowledge base and the difference of who you are, what you know, and how you can present it to others, plus adding more service to them. Genuine relationship developed service, and you will definitely increase to the compensation you desire. So I want to thank you. As we mentioned, everybody will receive a complimentary ebook as a copy of my You Might Be Getting Scammed When. That will go out to you. I also appreciate the time that you gave me today to share an opportunity with you. I would like to mention real briefly that through the Advocacy Network and our creation of a financial concierge practice, we do have everything we discussed today all well built and packaged for producers who are interested. And if you'd like to make a difference every day through the power of advocacy, you can call me at that number, 321-947-3220. You can drop me an email, and certainly, regardless, my most important and best thought for you is that you would work hard and become a rainmaker, and you would understand the steps in becoming a rainmaker and developing the relationships and separating yourself from all the white noise by simply becoming a person of integrity and building relationships. I think you'll find the compensation will certainly follow. Well, thanks again. Have a great day, and I'll speak with you soon. Welcome. So glad everybody could be with me today. This is Carl Schilling. Wanted to speak with you